Hello there. Welcome back to another live coding session today on YouTube. Today I'm gonna build some Blade templates with Vue.js, the JavaScript library we all love. So I'm gonna show you something in between Blade and Vue, like a standalone Vue application. I think there's a gap. You can build great stuff with Blade and use Vue.js just to sprinkle your templates instead of moving everything over to Vue or React or whatever framework you like, or maybe even use Livewire. So I'm just it's more like a conceptual thing I want to show you with some with a few components, so you get the idea. So let's get started. This is a Laravel application with just one view. It's the welcome page, this one. And I've imported Tailwind from a CDN. And here is my my JavaScript script tag, which links to this app.js file, which only imports Vue. So I've got Laravel mix running right here, which is watching this file. So we've got the Vue instance, we've got this welcome Blade view, and this is the app tag. Sorry, the div element with the ID of app. So that's where this Vue app is located. And then I'm including a subview, this one. So this is the Blade view we are working with today. So we can close this welcome file. And this application has two routes. It's got a get route that just returns the welcome view. And we've got a post route that we're going to use to do some validation on the request. So let's open Firefox and let's refresh the page. So the only thing I've got here is, let's see, is this form with the submit button and a div that contains the errors, if we have any validation errors. So, for example, you might have a file input. Let's create that one. Input, type file, and let's call this one attachment. So I'm sure you have seen this. This looks different in every browser, right? There's no like uniform way to use file elements, file input elements in your web applications. So there are a bunch of ways to style this, and I think the most commonly used is to put a div on top of this one and set the pointer events to null or none or whatever it's called in CSS. So we're not going to do that today, but you probably want to grab the file name from the file you're attaching. So if I want to attach a file, for example, this one, dummy.pdf, when you've got a div on top of this input element, you still want to see the file name. So somehow we need to grab this file name. I think it's great to build a Vue component for that. So let's start. I've got a template, which I'm gonna duplicate, and I will call this one file input. And then in the app.js file, we need to import it. So import file input from file input.vue, and we're gonna give it to the components property, this one. So of course, with Vue, you've got templates. So you can do something like file input, and then copy the template over to your Vue component. But that's not what we're going to do today, because I want to keep as much as possible from the template within Vue. So there's another option that's called inline template, which allows you to use it as a component with a slot. So you can do something like this inline template, and then you can access all the methods and data and properties that belongs to this component. But there is one other way to do this, and that's with slots. So in the Vue documentation, you can find it here, v slot, and you can give that slot your properties. So I'll show you this in a minute. But this is how we're going to build it. This is my preferred way to mix Blade and Vue components. So let's see what we can do. Let's call this one props, but you can call it whatever you like. So you might want to name this one file input props, or yeah, that's actually great, file input props. So let me show you. In the component, we have a render method, and it's going to return the default scoped slot. So this might seem complex. Don't worry about it for now. Let me show you what it does. So here you can return your properties. So for example, I'm going to give it a property name with my name. And then within this component, let's wrap this in a div, by the way. Yes. Let's comment out the input for now. Let's add a span with the HTML tag. And this is where we can reference the file input props. So now we can say v.html file input props dot name. And if everything goes well, if I refresh the page, yeah, there's my name. Let's open the Vue DevTools. In the root, we have a file input. Well, we have no properties and data, so let's work on that. The only thing we are interested in is the file name. So let's add a file name property. Sorry, a file name data property, which is null by default. We're not going to use properties, watcher, methods, maybe methods, I don't know. So before I forget, let's return this. Let's reverse. What's cool about this is that you can reference the data and computed properties and properties from within this scoped slot. So if I add the name to the data set, then instead of this string, I can reference this name. And then when we hit refresh, it should still yeah, echo out my name. So now in the DevTools we can update my name. And as you see, it updates the span as well. So back to the Vue component. Let's remove name. We want to return the file name. So file name. And then in the Blade view, let's update this to file name. And we are making this a paragraph as well. So below the file input. So how are we going to grab the file name from this file input? Let me show you. In the file input, let's add a method. Let's call that one set file name. So that one, no, let's add it to the methods, maybe. No, that's fine. I think we should do something like this. Value, and then set the file name. So let's see. By default, it is it's null, of course. Let's open the console. Set file name. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't work. This is not defined. Let's see. Why is that? Oh, maybe we need something like this. Oh, open the DevTools first. Yeah, now it's working. So we've got a, sorry about that. We've got a method to set the file name. So now we need to attach a handler to the change of the file input. So what we could do is add a method to the scope slot that's called changed, and we give it the event. So let's dump it. And now in the Blade view, we can attach the handler. So add change, and then we're gonna give it the change method. So let's see if this works. Nope. Ah, changed. So attach a file, and here is our event. So small recap. We've got a we've got a scoped slot with two keys: the file name, which reference to the data property file name, and we've got a method, a changed method. Maybe we should call this onChange, but for now this is fine, changed, which dumps out the event that comes from the change handler right here. So let's grab the files attached to the event. So the files is, I think this is target files. Let's see. Yeah, so we've got one file, and we are interested in the name, of course. So maybe something like if files dot length is greater than 0, we want to set the file name. So this set file name to the first file dot name. Let's see if this works. Yeah, that works. So of course, we could also do this inline. So instead of adding a separate method, which we're not going to use, I'm just going to replace this with the actual file name. And then we can remove all this stuff. And we can remove the property as well. So one more time. Let's open the Vue DevTools. File input. It's got no file name. We attach a file to the file input element. And then the change event is triggered. And we grab the file name from the event. So there we got it, our first Vue renderless component. So we've got a file input element with file input props. We attach the file name to the paragraph, and whenever the input is changed, we call this changed method. This one right here. So let's look at another example. Maybe a password generator. So let's do that. So I'm gonna create another input with the type of text. Give the name of password. Of course, you probably want to give it a type of password as well, but just for the demo. And I want a button that says generate password. Let's wrap it in div. And let's create our Vue component. So again, I've got a template with nothing in it. Let's duplicate this one to password generator. Import it in the app.js file. Add it to the components. And now we can use it right here. So password generator. And again, vslot password props. So whenever we call this, we click on this button, we want to generate a new password. So click.prevent. We want to hit the generate method. So let's add that one to our scope slot. Generate. And I've got a little snippet right here, which I'm gonna grab. So this is just generating a password out from this character set with a length of 16. So you have to trust me, this works. Let me show you. Let's dump out the random string. Refresh the page. Open the console. Generate password. And yeah, we've got a random string. So let's add a property. Sorry, a data. I'm always confused about properties and data. So password, by default, it's null. And when we hit generate, we of course want to set the password. So this password is random string. And we also want to expose the password to the properties. So let's check if this works. HTML password properties password. and this seemed to work. So that's nice. But of course we need to set it to the input. So we're gonna do that with the value binding. Let's remove the paragraph. And now we can generate a new password. So, and this is one-way binding, not two-way binding. So this is not the same as Vue model, because we are not actually interested in the password, right? On the Vue side, at least. So when we change the input field, we don't need to know it in the Vue component. So this doesn't change. You could do that, but I have no idea why in this case. So generate password generates a new random string, and it updates the value on the input element, but not the other way around. So when we change the input element, it does not update the password in the Vue component. So yeah, now we've got two really small Vue components. And what I like about this is they are really easy to test. So this is like 25 lines of code. This is incredibly easy to test with Vue test tools. It's easy to reuse. You're not bound to one template, so you can use this any way you like. If I want to update the button or update the input element, I can just do that. Of course, the same applies to the file input component. Here again, it's like 20 lines of code. It's really easy. And of course, you can combine these components. So maybe we should do one more, maybe with some validation. That's always fun. So you've probably had to deal with a form where you had an input field that was actually an array. So for example, if you want to have multiple email addresses or something like that, and you can, as an end user, add more of these input fields. So yeah, let's build that. Let's remove this for now. So input type, again, I'm gonna go for text so I don't got validation errors in the browser. Name, email, which is gonna be an array. So if I've got multiple of those, and let's dump out the request. So now I've got an array, right? This is just basic HTML. Let's do something about the styling, because this is really hard to see. No. Yeah, that's better. So A, B, C, submit. And now we've got an email array. But I want to start with one input element and then add a button that we can use to add another one. So add more. So how are we going to do this? Of course, we could do something like multiple inputs component or something like that. But I found another way to do this, and I call this the array component, or maybe the collection component. So I'm going to duplicate template, and I will call this collection. I used to call this array, but let's go for collection today. Import it. So of course this collection, it's gonna have some items. And we're also gonna use a property with the name default. I don't know if that's allowed in JavaScript. Let's see. So of course we want this element to know the items. So let's give it them. This items. Oh my god. So many typos. Items. Yes, that's what we've got. So when the component is mounted, we want to set the items to the default. So this is going to be this when the component is mounted. Let's start. Collection. Wrap it in a div. Give the property. So this time I'm just gonna use props. And yeah, we're gonna give it a default. Let's go for this null. Let's see if this works at all. Collection. Yeah. So let me prove this really works. 1, 2, 3. So now we have a collection with a default array with one item that is 1, 2, 3. And whenever this component is mounted, we set the data items to the default. So this is the same. So that's nice. And then we need, well, let's return to null. Let's see. What do we want? We want to loop over these items, right? So let's add another div for, let's call this one, yeah, maybe just item with a key in props items. Oops, items. Yes. So we're looping over the items from our collection, from here. And then for each item, we want an input element. So I'm gonna refresh the page. We already have got one. So let's see if we can add another item. And yeah, we get another input element. So this looping stuff works. So let's add a method to add another one. So this one, the add more. Let's add a method called push. And that's going to take the value and then this items dot push value. So whenever we click the button, we just want to add another, want to push another item to the collection. So props dot push null or empty string. You can do that as well, but I prefer null. Let's see if this works. add more, add more, add more. Yeah, this seems to work. So that's really cool. So let's add some server-side validation. Let's validate the email. It's required. We want it to be an array. And maybe we want 4 items at least. And of course, every item in the array should be an email. So let's see if we just hit send form, it's gonna crash. Every one of those should be a valid email. If we send it now, we should have another validation error as well. Yeah, we should have at least 4 items. So the validation works. So what if I enter something and submit the form? Of course, I'm losing the state. So we need some way to give the old data to the collection. So let's see. Of course, we need to do it right here. So I'm gonna add a little PHP block. Of course, you could do this inline as well, but for now. Default items. We grab the old input, the email key, and let's default to an array with 1 item. So this is the same as we're used to. But if there is any old input data, we're gonna grab that. And now we're gonna give the default property, the default items. So let's see. If I refresh the page, there should be just 1 item. Yep. And if I give it a value and I submit the form, then we've got an error, but I've got no input data. But I've got it in the view component. So it works, but we don't see it in the input element. And that's of course because we need to update the value. So let's give it the value of item, which is the current iteration. Oh, forgot to save. So let's do that one more time. Send form. Yeah, let's change the name to see. Let's add another one. See that this works. So this works, but you probably already saw a bug, and that's I can change this and this one as well. But whenever I click add more, it falls back to the old data. So that's because we are not updating the actual array, the items in the array. So whenever we click add more, it's gonna reload the DOM or update the DOM, and we are losing our data. So we need at least one more method in our collection component, and that is the put method. So put key value, and then this item's key is equals to value. So let's do a bit of cleanup. We don't need all of this. So let's use the put method. Let's make some room. So just like the file input, we are going to use the add input, or you can also use v-on input. And actually in the file input example, we've used the changed event, but now I'm going to use the event, the input event, and give that an inline method. Or sorry, a function. So on input, we're going to use the event. So from the event, we want the value. So event target value, and we want to set it to the key of the current iteration. So props.put key. I think that's it. Let's see if it works. So refresh the page. Let's wait for DevTools to reload. So now we've got, again, an array with one item. That's null. Let's update the item. Add more. So here you can see the data is changing. I'm not sure why the property is changing. But let's see. Send form. We need at least 4 items. So I'm going to change this one, add one more, and now we're not losing our data. Submit. And of course, all of these are not valid email addresses. Maybe this one is. So now we've got a collection component, which is really easy. Of course, you can add all kinds of method to it. This is really simple. But the cool thing about this is you can use this for all kinds of templates. So now we've used it to add multiple input elements, but you can use it for other things as well. So this is not strictly bound to form elements. And that's what I really like about Renderless Vue components. So this component does not care about templates or styling, or it even doesn't care what the items are in this case. So now they are email addresses, but they could be anything really. And we can reuse this throughout our Blade components and views and templates. So this is not just one thing it can do. Now it can iterate over email addresses and add multiple input elements. But of course you can do much more just with this component. And again, this is really easy to test. This is just probably some of the most basic JavaScript you've ever seen. And you can, this is also easy to test with something like Laravel Dusk if you want to go that way. So yeah, that's what I want to show you today. I think I'm going to write a blog post on this as well. Yeah, I'm going to share these components with you, maybe on GitHub somewhere. So again, what I really like about this is that you don't have to move over your Blade components, your Blade views, templates, all that stuff to Vue. You can use Vue just as a tool to collect your methods and all your dynamic stuff, and just use it to sprinkle your Blade views. Of course, you could do something like Laravel Livewire as well, but I really like Vue. But what I don't like is if I have to move over this stuff to the template section of a Vue component or use inline templates. It's always going to be a mess. So this is really clean with the props slot. You can still use all the Vue template power. So yeah, that's that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and maybe I will see you next week. All right, bye bye.